I'd like to call this meeting of the Bedford County Board of Supervisors to order. Welcome everyone here this evening. If you have a cell phone, if you wouldn't mind either turning it off or setting it on vibrate, that'd be great. I don't see any hats that need to be removed, so we appreciate that. We will start this meeting with a moment of silence. Thank you. If you'd stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Right. Next item is review and approval of our agenda. Are there any questions regarding that? If not,
I make a motion, we approve the agenda as presented.
okay, we have a motion from Mr. Scott. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Parker. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. That brings us to our citizen comment period. I don't have anyone that has signed up, but if you'd like to speak, you'll have 3 minutes. If anybody's here that intends on speaking about the mandatory sewage disposals pump out proposal, you may want to wait until the public hearing is scheduled in case it's done in the next 90 days, but you are free to speak about it tonight if you wish. Does anybody would like to speak tonight? See anyone running? So we will close the citizen comment period, move on to our consent agenda. Mr. Hiss.
Okay, we have 3 items this evening. Item A is a resolution approving the submission and acceptance of the Virginia Department of Emergency Management FY25 individual PEP grant, which PEP stands for Public Safety Answer Point Education Program. So this is for the 911 Center. Item B is a resolution adding Woodbury Square Place to VDOT's secondary system of state highways. And item C is a resolution adding Lockwood Hill Drive to VDOT's secondary system of state highways.
Okay. Any questions with regard to the consent agenda? If no questions, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion, we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion for Ms. Parker, seconded by Ms. Bansley. This is a roll call vote. Oh. Deepen that voice up. Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. Bansley. Mr. Sharp.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Ms. Parker.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, motion passes. All right, that moves us on to the approval of the minutes from June 26, 2023. There was an amendment to line 74 to clarify the board decided to fund the LRBA contingent upon meeting the staff recommended performance measures. Are there any other corrections to those minutes? If none, I entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with that one correction.
Okay, we have a motion from Ms. Parker. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Scott. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. That moves us along to our public hearings. The first thing up tonight is consideration of a resolution approving special use permit application SU 23-0010 on behalf of PLS LLC, which is resolution R 092-523-05. Ms. Currington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. My name is Abigail Currington. I'm with the Division of Planning, and I will be presenting the special use application SU 23-0010. The applicant and property owner is PLS LLC. The subject parcels are RPC number 905-10795, which is 5.39 acres, and RPC number 905-10796, which is 6.2 acres, and are located on Homestead Drive, approximately 0.1 miles west from its intersection with Enterprise Drive in Forest, Virginia. The parcels are currently zoned as C2. The proposed use is an industry type 1 use, and they are located in election district number 4. The location map shows the parcels outlined in blue and their relation to other county roads. The parcels are located on Homestead Drive, Route 661. The zoning map shows the parcel's current zoning designation as C2. The immediate surrounding zoning also includes C2, I2, R3, and further out on Forest Road you have PD1 and PID. The future land use map identifies the subject parcel and surrounding properties as mixed use. The aerial photograph from 2022 shows the parcels are currently undeveloped. This is the first page of the concept plan submitted by the applicant's engineer. If the special use gets approved, they will need to submit a major site plan for the establishment of the industry type 1 use to check compliance with the zoning ordinance, as well as requirements for the reviewing agencies per their technical review committee comments. They have proposed a 3-phase expansion as follows. Phase 1 is a 50,000 square foot warehouse and associated parking to be built on parcel number 905-10795. Phase 2 is a second 50,000 square foot warehouse addition on parcel number 905-10795 with associated parking on both parcel number 905-10795 and parcel number 11802-601. Phase 3 is a 50,000 square foot warehouse and associated parking to be built on parcel number 905-10796. The properties will be served by public water and sewer. VDOT will require a traffic narrative at the site plan stage to evaluate the impacts of each phase of the development, along with an analysis of the truck movements between the 3 commercial entrances. An access management exception will also be required for phase 1, and a land disturbing permit will be needed because 10,000 square feet or greater is being disturbed. The Planning Commission meeting was held on September 5th, 2023. 2 citizens spoke during the public hearing, citing concerns of increased traffic on Homestead Drive, accidents, and general incompatibility with surrounding area. The Planning Commission voted 7-0 to recommend approval of the application with staff conditions. The planning staff has recommended the following conditions. 1, general conformance with the concept plan and conformance with all ordinance standards is required for site plan approval. Any changes to the layout of the site will result in increased impacts to adjoining properties and uses shall require approval of an amended special use permit. And 2, the approval of special use permit SU 22-0006 shall be superseded by this approval. This concludes the staff presentation. Any questions from the planning perspective?
Any questions for Abigail? Okay, thanks. Does the applicant have a presentation?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, member of the board. My name is Norm Walton. I'm with Perkins & Orson. I'm the engineer representing the owner developer. We were here not long ago with a similar request, and as Parkland Direct evaluated their needs and their future growth, we realized that what we had asked for originally was not enough square footage to handle even their immediate needs, much less their future needs. So Mr. Seckman, Leland Seckman's here this evening. Mr. Seckman and I decided to take a longer-term approach, looking at a 25-year build-out, you know, what he would look at as a maximum growth for Parkland Direct Printing at this location. And so that's what we have here today. So our intent is to provide a plan that allows a long-term growth for Parkland Direct, and we won't have to come back to you again, hence the 3 phases. As was mentioned, there was a public comment regarding the entrances onto Homestead Drive. We are evaluating a means to which we can combine those entrances. There's a significant topographic relief across the property, which makes combining the entrances not exactly easy, but we're looking at options to try to combine those so there's only one entrance onto Homestead Drive. And I would be more than happy to entertain any questions that you may have at this point in time. Thank you.
Any questions for Norm?
Well, related to what Norm just said, talking about 20-year build-out. So if we approve this is a special use permit, I thought there was a certain time frame in which somebody had to start or do something substantial towards that. Like they can wait 20 years?
Yeah, I mean, you have to show initiative to have wanted to move forward with the special use permit within 5 years. Or, excuse me, I'm sorry, 2 years. I apologize, 2 years. So yeah, I mean, as long as I imagine Norm's probably gonna come forward with a site plan to us. As long as he gets the first one done, it kind of keeps it going. So it runs with the land from there on in. As long as they use it within the first 2 years, be okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, sir. All right. I don't have anyone signed up, but there is a citizen comment portion to this public hearing, so I'll open that now for anybody that wishes to speak for or against it. It's a lot of pressure on the one that's here. All right, I don't see anyone that wants to speak, so I'll close the citizen comment time and open it up to the board for discussion.
Mr. Chair, if there is no discussion, then I'd make a motion to approve a resolution R 092523-05.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Sharp. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Parker. This is a roll call. Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Bansley?
Yes.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, motion passes. That moves us on to our next public hearing for consideration of a resolution approving special use permit application SU 23-0011 on behalf of RYT LLC. Resolution R 092523-06. Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you mentioned, this is special use permit application SU 23-0011. The applicant for this application is Jed Campbell on property owned by YRT LLC. This SUP is for 3 parcels in the Montvale area. Location of that project area, 11400 West Lynchburg Salem Turnpike. And the applicant is proposing to establish an equipment sales and rental use as a Kubota dealership in election district number 6. And here's a location map showing the properties fronting along West Lynchburg Salem Turnpike. It's near the tanks in Montvale. Your zoning map shows the property is zoned C2 with a quarter overlay district lying along West Lynchburg Salem Turnpike. You do have some I2 and I1 to the rear of the property, and you do have some AP and AV further away from the property. Future land use map has this area designated for commercial use. You do have industrial use to the south, and you have mixed use across the other side of 460. And here's the aerial photograph of the site. This was taken in 2022. Looks much the same today. And here is the project. So you have the existing building on Family Dollar, and the applicant is also proposing to utilize those 2 properties that you see in the middle of your screen for a display area for equipment. Planning Commission held a public hearing on this application on September 5th, 2023. We did not have a citizen speak for or against the application, and the Planning Commission recommended approval of the application with staff conditions by a vote of 6-0. We did have 1 Planning Commission member abstain from voting. Recommended condition by the Planning Commission is that general conformance to the concept plan and conformance to all ordinance standards is a requirement for site plan approval. Any changes to the layout of the site that will result in increased impacts to adjoining properties and uses shall require approval and amended special use permit process that's outlined in section 30-19 of the zoning ordinance. Have any questions I can answer from a planning perspective? And I did kind of give a picture here of their Lynchburg location if you want to kind of get an idea of what to expect.
I have a question, Jordan.
Yes, sir.
There's I've spent a fair amount of time out there, and there's trees along 460, if I'm not mistaken, that kind of obstruct the view of the future proposed business there. Is there any reason why they can't remove those trees?
Now, this came up during the planning commission. I mean, Mr. Ray asked that particular question. The answer to that question is that at that time when Family Dollar was developed, the corridor overlay district had a very large amount of landscaping that was required between the parking lot area and the roadway. So yeah, the applicant can remove the vast majority of that landscaping there.
Any other questions for Jordan?
Mr. Chair. I guess this is just a procedural question, but it's just, this wouldn't be considered by right use in commercial district?
It is not. Equipment sales and rental is the only use where you can display the type of everything that they want to sell on the particular property, which is the tractors, the side-by-sides, and everything that Kubota makes. So this was the particular use that was needed to be applied for.
Not sure. It seems like they shouldn't have to come here. That's probably my thinking.
Maybe a future ordinance amendment we can put on your docket.
Any other questions?
If there's no further discussion.
We gotta have public hearing.
Oh, public hearing.
And Mr. Walton is here, and if you have any questions for him, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer those for you.
Okay. Any presentation from applicant?
Good evening again. I'll keep my comments very brief. The developer is intending on renovating the building. The parking is there. The grass lots are great for demonstrating mowers and the other equipment that they need, so there's absolutely no plans for do any kind of real site work there besides cleaning up the trees and making the site a little more visible than it is right now. I think we will have to put a chain link fence around the outside sales area, and there'll be a minor site plan for the change in use, and that's basically it. So we should be ready to go with this relatively quickly. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to entertain them.
So he's not going to build another building?
No, no other building,
Isn't
no,
that
sir.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
That he's able to use that field.
yeah, and it's enough glass frontage there that they can use that as a showroom area, and so the building as it is pretty much work fine for them.
How's that building compared to what he's got in Lynchburg? Is that
It's a little bit smaller just because he's added on in the rear for maintenance and repair area. So I don't know if he'll move or have to expand in the future, but right now there are no plans for expansion.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yep, thank you.
All right. I don't have anyone signed up, but I will open the citizen comment portion of this for anyone that would like to speak for or against the project. Take it everybody owns John Deere. No. All right, I'll close the citizen portion comment of this and open it up for discussion of the board.
If there's no further discussion, I would move that we would approve Resolution R 092523-06.
We have a motion by Mr. Davis, seconded by Mr. Scott. Roll call vote, Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Bansley?
Yes.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, motion passes. That brings us to our action items. The first item is consideration of a resolution initiating a text amendment to the county code, Chapter 10, which is mandatory sewage disposal system pump out, Resolution R 092523-07. Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be bringing, this is obviously something you should be familiar with. We had some in-depth discussions about this particular ordinance. I'll kind of briefly go through that. So obviously during a discussion on the amendments we were discussing with short-term rental, the Board of Supervisors requested that we look into a pump-out program for all dwellings within 500 feet of Smith Mountain Lake and Leesville Lake. Staff did the research on that, brought forth an amendment to Chapter 10 that was based on a model from Franklin County. And this, of course, was discussed at two work sessions with the board on July 24th and August 14th of 2023. and kind of go through the ordinance, what it does have in it. So all properties within all properties with dwelling units within 500 feet of Smith Mountain Lake, and of course the elevation that that's taken from is the full pond elevations, are required to have a pump out every 5 years. The pump outs must come from a sewage handler permitted and certified by the Virginia Department of Health. The county will notify owners of the first pump out. It will be a group every year. It will not be everyone in year one. So it'll be we'll have a group every year, and we'll publish that on the website when we get a little closer if you were to adopt this heading into 2024. Property owners will need to register the pump out with the Department of Community Development, and there's a $20 processing fee for us to register that. Failure to comply with this ordinance could result in a $500 civil penalty if at the end of the year the property owner shall also get an additional notification they have not complied. And if they fail to get us the registration within the specified period of time, this penalty would kick in. So 2022-2024 strategic plan. Clearly, if you were to adopt this ordinance, you would definitely be making progress toward objective 4.2, which is protect water quality throughout Bedford County, primarily with Smith Mountain Lake and Leesville Lake. 4.2.1, adopt a policy to review septic systems on a regular cadence. And here is the proposed ordinance that is in your packet. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them from a planning perspective.
Any questions for Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Is there any discussion from the board on this? Would be to just initiate the text amendment at this point?
We had enough discussion on this to match the Korean War truce.
Mr. Chairman, if there aren't any more discussion, I move that we approve Resolution R 092523-07.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Johnson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Davis. This is a roll call. Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. Bansley.
Yes.
Mr. Sharp.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Ms. Parker.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, motion passes. Next up is the consideration of a resolution setting the depreciation rate on 2023 personal property taxes for cars, trucks, motorcycles, motorhomes, and trailers. That's Resolution R 092523-08. Ms. Anderson.
Good evening, everybody. So again, before you is a resolution for the 15% depreciation rate to be applied to 2023 personal property tax assessed values for cars, trucks, motorcycles, motorhomes, and trailers. This recommendation has come out of conversations that have occurred since the board voted to apply a 33% rebate to the 2022 values last year. It does take into account all new purchases and sales that have occurred in these categories since that time. And ultimately, the rate that is recommended is striving to achieve retention of that net growth, but then also to recognize that values have not necessarily come back down to quote-unquote normal levels, and therefore ease a little bit of the tax burden that is associated with those supply chain shortage and inflationary increases. By adopting a 15% depreciation rate, we would provide approximately $3.97 million in tax relief to taxpayers. Any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Anderson? Okay, thank you. Any discussion here from the board on this proposal? And for the benefit of those watching, we have always taxed at 100% of the personal property rate. This would be doing it at 85%.
There being no other discussion, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution R 092523-08.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Sharp, seconded by Ms. Bansley. This is a roll call. Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Bansley? Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, motion passes. That brings us to the consideration of a resolution setting the percentage tax relief rate available through the personal property tax relief rate. Resolution R 092523-09. Ms. Anderson.
So as you mentioned, this particular rate is the personal property tax relief rate. This is different in the sense that the depreciation rate we just discussed is applied to the assessed value before taxes are calculated. This rate is going to be applied as part of that calculation of the actual tax. This is something that we do every year, a rate that we adopt every year. The county receives $6.1 million roughly from the state for this relief, and so we set a rate that as closely approximates the amount that we receive from the state as we can. So based off of the values with that 15% depreciation rate in place, we are recommending a 33% personal property tax relief rate for the 2023 taxes.
Any questions for Ms. Anderson? This is affectionately known as the car tax relief. All right, thank you. Is there any discussion from the board on this resolution?
Mr. Chair, if there's no discussion, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution R 092523-09.
All right, we have a motion for Ms. Parker. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Sharp. This is a roll call. Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Bansley?
Yes.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, motion passes. This brings us to consideration of a resolution approving the submission, acceptance, and appropriation of the Virginia Department of Emergency Management Staffing Recognition Grant Resolution R 092523-02. Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, before you have a resolution to adopt and to, I guess, apply and adopt the funding for the PSAP recognition grant. This is a first time that they've ever offered this grant to 911 centers. Excuse me, sorry. First time they've ever offered this grant to 911 centers. It was a initiative from the PSAP committee, which is a subcommittee to the 911 Services Board, that brought this before the 911 Services Board for approval, and their biggest thing is to try to retain people in the 911 centers due to staffing shortages across the nation, and also to try to bring new people into the 911 centers. With this grant, this would give every eligible full-time employee currently working for us a $2,500 one-time payment for a retention bonus, and each part-time employee a $1,250 one-time payment. You were also able to apply for your vacant positions, so any kind of vacant positions we have, we would use that funding as basically a recruitment and retention bonus. With this would be a total of 26 full-time eligible employees in our department, 3 part-time eligible employees, so the total costs or the total grant funds would be $68,750. The grant does not cover the employer tax side of it, which is a 7.65%. So that would be roughly $5,259 that the county would have to pay in the taxes in order to give the employees the bonus. So in front of you, there was a pretty short timeline for this. They kind of advertised it. With this being a very new grant, there was a lot of information sessions that really led up to about the week before the grant was due. So we did apply for the grant, so we would, if it's not approved tonight, we will remove our submission from the grant. But we are asking for approval to continue with the process of it, as well as accepting the funds if they are approved. We would have to take the money for the taxes out of our operational budget and move them to the 911 grant fund to cover those employees' costs, tax costs.
Okay.
I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Justin? So this, you already have those funds, you just need to do a departmental transfer for
The
the
grant
tax.
has been applied for. The 911 Services Board did approve the grants, but they have not sent award letters for the official notification that the awards were.
I was
approved.
referencing the tax.
Yes,
portion
we
that
would
you're
need to
gonna-
move that funding from the operational budget to the grant budget.
Any other questions for Justin? Okay, thank you.
Is there a commitment to do this in future years?
There is not at this time. I know that it's gotten very positive feedback from localities. They had over 113 applications apply for it.
Okay. All right, any discussion from the board on this resolution? If no discussion, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Resolution R 092523-02.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Johnson. Is there a second?
Second.
second by Mr. Davis. This is roll call. Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Bansley?
Yes.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, motion passes. All right, that brings us down to board committee reports, which we have none. On to board comments. Is there any board member wishing to share anything this evening?
I'd just like to say that it's just been a lot of talk on social media about the ball fields at Edmond Street over at the old Susie Gibson, about how they're not being mowed, and sometimes either one entity, whether it's the town or the county, or is mowing and leaving part of it undone because their kids aren't playing there, but the other kids are coming and playing, and kids are having to go out there and play in stuff that's knee-high, and I don't know what the answer is, but it just seems to be a lot of petty stuff going on there, and I'd just like to bring it to our attention.
Mr. Johnson, is that the school board, or that's the
Yeah.
school board in it?
Who owns that field?
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Johnson, I know the school board and the town council have been debating this, like a transfer of property and the lease and so forth. They've been debating that for months and months. But we'll double check to see if we have any maintenance role in any of that. I'm not exactly sure if we do. I don't think we do, but we'll double check if we have any responsibility or not.
I just wanted to bring it to our attention.
Any other board comments for this evening? All right, that'll move us on to.
Actually,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I should have thought of this one. Earlier today, I received a phone call from a gentleman who was dealing with a lot of fire ash landing on his house and his cars, just all over his property. He sent me a number of pictures, and it's because there's a development off behind his home that's being developed there, and they clear cut. I guess they had some brush piles, fairly large, like bonfire type piles. And they had already contacted the fire marshal ahead of time to let them know they were going to be doing this burn. And they did the burn, but unfortunately, a fire like that produces a lot of ash, and it's landing all over. So I mean, got lots of pictures. I sent it off to staff to see if there was something that, there's something in our ordinance that addresses something like this. It turns out there's not. The fire marshal said that, based on the pictures, that they were abiding by, their request for, keeping it away from the property line, that type of thing. However, it is a, in a residential area like that, it can be a nuisance, and quite frankly, I would think it could potentially be a fire hazard. And Justin weighed in because of his experience at another locality in which they had similar complaints, and he actually had a very good suggestion, what I thought was a good suggestion, in having something in an ordinance that, at least if it's in a residential area, where it's put in like a pit or in some type of, where they would have to dig the pit to burn, and by doing it, evidently it produces a lot less ash. Sort of like my solo stove will produce a lot less ash than a normal fire pit, right, because of the air circulation. And by doing that, you tend to reduce these types of complaints. So I know we haven't had a lot of these, but the pictures from my perspective was pretty dramatic, the amount of ash that had been developed from these fires. So I would like to see us maybe entertain something like Justin had suggested. Maybe that could be brought up for discussion in a work session. And I would think they would only be applicable in residential areas, but I think a developer probably needs to be a little more responsible than what I think we currently require. But I'd like to see some type of consensus from the board to ask staff to bring us something along those lines. at least entertain to send to the planning commission.
This would be specific to R1, R2?
I would think so.
Right.
All the Rs.
But you're gonna have to name setbacks, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the model ordinance that Justin sent, I was very impressed. That one, he was familiar with this situation, but two, already had some pretty good language that I think we could use as a starting place for this. I don't know if you want to elaborate, Justin.
I mean, there's a couple of different avenues. You could do it by zoning, or you can do proximity, within 500 feet, 1,000 feet of an occupied structure. A lot of different variables you can look at, but it is something that a lot of localities are facing that are getting heavily developed. You got established neighborhoods and clearing for the next development over. And the ash generally just, follows the wind. And if it's burning hot and pile burns, you're not getting it burned all the way, and you are getting deposits on vehicles and homes and things like that in certain situations when that proximity is there. But if the board wishes, we can certainly look at bringing some code language forward as a discussion point.
I think it's worth, from my perspective, I think it's worth at least considering for us to at least consider it, and then if we think it's a good idea, we can send it, much like we're sending the septic pump out ordinance. So it would take a little while, but I think it's worth considering.
I do know that if anybody burns a fire, trash, and it damages somebody else's property, you can go after them, make them pay for it. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, well, in this particular case, I don't think it burned any houses down, but it created a mess. I can show you some pictures. But somebody's gonna have to do a lot of cleanup.
Mr. Chair. If this Saturday evening, September 30th, the folks in Montvale at the Montvale School Preservation Foundation and myself also, we are putting on a benefit to help preserve the Montvale School. And there's going to be a good band playing there, Pleading the Fifth band from the Forest area. And they're going to play from 3 to 6. The gates actually open at 1. There will be an early farmer's market, and then the band will be playing, and it should be a good time.
Go step back to his to see if there was a consensus on staff real quick. I'm open to hearing about it. I don't, just, it is not going to be smoke. That's all I will say. It has to be ash. Can't be smoke.
It was, the ordinance that he talked about, I just don't want to have an illegal meeting, so I didn't forward it to anyone, right? But the ordinance that he had suggested, really, it was just the way they do it, so that the goal is to reduce it. It doesn't, it's not necessarily says you can't have smoke, you can't have ash. It's just you're taking steps to try to reduce it.
Mitigate.
Right? To mitigate it. I think, and that I think is a reasonable expectation. You can't, I don't think there's any way to guarantee that you're not going to have.
Make sure we're not requiring out, my way, brush fires. We're clearing property, land for farm purposes, but in a residential area, I can get with it.
And usually it's just because of, it's just a large development. In this particular case, there's, a forest was clear cut off of Homestead or Bateman Bridge Road. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, if you've driven down Bateman Bridge lately. There's this one area where it looks like they're gonna put in a bunch of apartments or townhouses or something. And they just clear cut a forest there. And all the debris, that's what's, they had these piles and they just lit them all on fire today, and ash came raining down.
So is there consensus for staff to consider this?
I'm for it, but I still think that we need to be very careful, adding more regulations and stuff that can't be enforced, and you, like you said, the smoke, this, that, and the other, where you draw the line.
Understood.
All right. Any other board comments? Let's see, Mr. Hish, I know we need to do VACO voting credentials.
Yeah, I think that's all I had was a couple of us will be attending the VACO annual conference in November, Mr. Johnson, and then we can amend this form and have Mrs. Bansley as listed as an alternate as well if you're attending. So
Isn't that how it was last year?
I think so.
Is that how you like it, or do you want to switch it up?
That's fine. I get to go home earlier, so if he wants to stay.
We could have them arm wrestle for it.
That's right. That's right. So,
You have to be there Sunday to, if you got the credentials found out. It worked out. Don't they let me vote in your absence, didn't they?
You were second last time. I was first and second, and then I left, and because he said he would stay, and so he could go first.
Oh, I see.
all right.
Okay.
I'm sorry, just
Do we need an
before
actual vote on that?
No, consensus is fine. Did you say that you had to be there a day early if you were the rep?
No, you have to be
No,
there,
You just have to be there Sunday morning.
Okay, all right. I just want to be sure I booked you for the right time.
but the meeting is Tuesday.
Or whatever that was.
Yeah, the meeting is Tuesday morning.
Just on
Okay,
Sunday.
but you'll still come home Tuesday?
And you gotta be there on
Tuesday
Sunday to go
afterwards.
to a
It's at
Tuesday
10
meeting.
in the morning.
Okay,
It ends at noon.
okay.
All right, so we have a consensus for Mr. Johnson to be the lead voter with Ms. Bansley telling him how to do it.
Tell them how to vote.
All right. I think we have a consensus.
All right. And that's all I had, Mr. Chair.
All right. Let's see, we have no board appointments. Mr. Skelly, anything from you? All right, you have in your packet the Social Services Board minutes, which I think it's the first time I've actually seen them in 6 years I've been on the board.
Miss-
I figured as much. Upcoming calendar and reminders, Mr. Hiss.
Yeah, I will say there is one change on the calendar on October 10th. We're going to cancel the 7 o'clock regular Board of Supervisors meeting. We are just going to have the 5 o'clock joint meeting with the Economic Development Authority. And
Is it going to
that'll-
run long, or do you think it's going to be done by 7?
It'll be done.
We will have a hard stop at 6:30.
But no 7 o'clock meeting?
Correct.
For those that wish to attend the Bedford County Farm Bureau annual meeting, that'll be at 7 o'clock.
As I told someone the other day, earlier this evening, that if it seems to run long, you can always vote with your feet.
So this gets at 6:30.
I do have one question because it was mentioned at the BRWA meeting that there's also a joint meeting coming up
Roundtable.
October 5th on which is a Thursday around.
Round table.
Yeah, that's it's a BRWA. I don't think they've done this for a couple of years, but they call it a planning roundtable meeting where a couple Board of Supervisors, I know in this case will be Mr. Tuck and Mr. Scott are going to attend, a couple EDA members, Planning Commission members, some staff, also from the town officials, same thing, BRWA, and we all just kind of get together and
So just the
talk
committees
about-
then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we just, we're just going to talk about, growth in the community and BRW infrastructure's role and what that has to do, what.
Maybe I misunderstood, because I got the impression that it was potentially the entire city council or town council, the entire board of supervisors.
No, it's just a couple members of each body, so
When is that going to be? Because I'm going to have to post.
I'll get it with you later.
It's October 5th, because there's a possibility that I may be in attendance.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Just, we have our November 6th, first Monday of the month meeting. You know that's the day before Election Day, right?
I did bring that up, yes.
Okay,
You bring it up.
okay.
The options were to have it
Tommy said we were going to get
that
out at
day, or,
7:15.
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
You could have it then, or you would have to move your
7:17.
Monday meeting to Wednesday because everybody's at VACO.
I was just saying, oh boy, it's gonna be a long day.
Yeah.
All right.
And Mr. Tuck and I will
Already
have
said
birthdays
it.
that night.
You were out of line.
I do have a motion for Mr. Scott to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Sharp. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.
You slicked one over.